Oh, and by the way, while I'm on this topic, let me just summarize the reality that the black human being is not the Homo Sapiens Sapiens. It does not belong to that stock. This is simply the reality of this planet, the reality of humanity. You don't know that. The rest of the world does not know that simply because you've been taught the wrong information. And the information you've been taught about you is one that is orchestrated to be such. It's very talented to be what it is, to teach you what you know. But I know I've talked a lot already, but I'm just going to give you a summary as far as that is concerned and put it in perspective for you so you grasp it. But before I do that, let me just do a quick little review on this notion of evolution. I do have a discourse where I totally dismantle evolution and give you the details. It's a discourse of an hour, 30-minute length. So if you fetch through my recording, you will find that. Just about on every one of my recording, I do touch up on that and give you a little bit. But there is a couple of particular dissertations that I've done which deal with evolution in particular. But, well, there's not much to say about this thing called evolution. I mean, at this day and age, today, circa 2016, we are not to carry on in our studies and our endeavors to understand this cosmos and what it is that is life and the universe with this plural, and I would say infantile level of understanding. If we want to proceed, if we want to enhance our knowledge and our technology, and if we want to now become a race of higher intelligence, and I'm talking the totality of the folk on this planet, if we want to do that, then we've got to let go of this fashion of understanding the state of being of living organism, the state of being of man and mankind, because that is only doing us a disservice. But the thing is very simple. I'll give it to you very briefly, okay? Because the point that I really want to make is the fact that the black human being, notably the person that is resembling the being of sub-Saharan Africa, the pitch black being, is not Homo Sapiens Sapiens. But here's evolution. The thing with it is that it needs new information. You know, the state of genes also is unchanging. That's a problem for it. An individual person does not evolve. That's a statement according to science, meaning no one today and no one in what is the past or ape or no being has been evolving or has evolved. And that is not going to be the case in what is the future. Therefore, this whole survival of the fittest natural selection business is complete rubbish. It's unrealistic. We also have the fact that genetic mutations, which are caused by the environment, what we have as somatic mutations, they cannot be passed on to an unborn child. They cannot be passed on to your child. So that's a problem there. DNA duplication, DNA replication, is only an occurrence that ensures that the rearranging of genes, and it shows the rearranging of genes to now produce a new phenotype. You know, that's a problem there. It only ensures the rearranging of the genes within the DNA to produce a new phenotype in the fashion that we today rearranged our 10 digits that we have, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, to produce new phone numbers. The digits, the pertinent digits by themselves, do not change. See? And we also have the fact that something recessive cannot produce one that is superior to it. Intelligence also does not unmet. So we have many problems. As far as the case of something recessive unable to produce something superior, you'll find the case that the recessive monkey, by all means, the specimen that is the monkey is one that is recessive to this pitch black African person. You see, this recessive being, in particular, it's fur-like hair. It's straight fur-like hair, cannot produce the black being, this black person of a crispy type, curly, cakey type of stronger hair. In addition to everything else, it cannot produce, it cannot pass on intelligence to this being, because the black being is one that is intelligent, the monkey is not. Here's the thing, man. The thing is nonsensical. It is only based on intellectual, data-centric stuff, simply stuff. And it's not dealing with intelligent, rational understanding. It's not dealing with anything of higher intelligence. And as far as that is concerned, higher, superior level of intelligence. Once you get to that stage, you now understand that this notion of time does not exist, and to suggest that over the course of something called time, a being's biological makeup is now going to be caused to self-change is at most very infantile. That's baby talk. So time does not exist, be it not fictitious. And so to say that over millions and millions and millions of years, a being is now going to somehow self-change, that's ridiculous. We that are of a higher intelligence, we recognize that the being is simply in space. And there is no such a thing as time passing on it. The being simply exists. And so no such a thing as time or the turning of a needle in a clock is going to cause it to change. So evolution is out of the ballpark. That's for children. People of such intelligence as myself, awakened human, with this human intelligence, we know that to be sub-intelligence to the 10th exponent. Pass on evolution. And I'm making my way to explain it to you how the black being of the sub-Saharan type. Now, I have to stress on that because there are people of the dark complexion that would want to pass for this being. But there is differentiation between the types of black peoples on this planet. Move on past evolution. Now let's take a look at the biblical story, the biblical Genesis story. That in itself is not the truth of our planet. It's not the truth of humanity. The biblical Genesis story is completely allegorical. I mean, the Genesis story is fully allegorical, and so is 80% of the Bible. Much of it is also blatant lies. You find about 15% of it that is true, but there are information copied and now going to be recited from information of previous civilizations, as the story that the Bible itself tells clearly is not the first story of this planet. It is the first story of mankind. See, if you don't know enough, you cannot make this differentiation. But it is not the first story of this planet. And so a lot of the allegories that you find in it is going to be a recital from knowledge from previous civilizations. And there have been many a civilization before the societies that would have come out of mankind. Up to this point, I cannot in good faith say that mankind has produced civilizations. There have been societal grouping of people. There have been peoples. The civilizations, we have not seen that ever since the human has lost its control of the planet. In any event, there are hundreds of culprits within the biblical story. There's problems all over the place, and as I've explained, the Bible is not all it cracks out to be. I've explained how the Bible is written. It's not this God-written thing or something called God that has written it, that it is the utmost truth of this planet that cannot be debated. The thing is so childish, anyone with such intelligence as mine can see through it, call it what it is. It's ridiculous. I've explained how it's written. It's really, first of all, it's not written per the people. For instance, when it's talking about Jacob or when it's talking about Job, the case of Job, for instance, it's not a case where Job is now writing everything that is happening about his life and the whole earth and his own surrounding. That's not how it's written. And to those of you gullibles out there that don't take the time to think about that, that don't mean to be vexed, but when I'm talking about such things and to realize that they've actually become the truth of this planet, well, they've been passed to be the reality of this planet when they're false, is very vexing to me. It's very annoying. And so I feel like taking shots at y'all, but I don't mean to be disrespectful. So I will draw the term gullible. But to those of you that have blindly accepted these things, it is because you have not taken your time to analyze and decipher through reality to understand the truth of this planet. So it's not a case where some person named Job or Moses was writing everything as it was happening. Okay, it's not that. And it would be at most a recital or a gathering of oral information that was kept through the generations, and at a later stage they have been compiled together based on oral remembering of what had taken place. And this thing now is going to be written by a third party. It would be what is sort of like your Wikipedia of today, your news, your report. That's what it is. And in the course of which you're going to find the stories, they're going to be folkloric. They're going to be narrated in an allegorical fashion. A lot of it is not really the actual happening, and a lot of it is going to be mixed up. You're going to get bits and pieces here and there to shape up a story. And sometimes it's not telling of the exact time when it happened, and sometimes it's not telling of the exact people. Sometimes it's not even telling of the exact same civilization. So it's just blended up to attempt at telling a story, like the case of Noah and the boat, for instance. You certainly, well, to those of you that take the book verbatim, you think that at that time, some man called Noah had put together a boat. You folk are so, I don't want to offend people, but that's the term. You've used such some intelligence to now, you are making researches to actually find the boat of Noah. It's unfathomable. In any event, it was not a case of a person that is now gathering pairs of animals and putting each pair of animal inside of a boat. That is not what took place. This is an allegory that it only talks about the preparing of a number of people for an event that was pending and that was going to happen. And we know such event as what is the deluge, the flood. This event, per my research, is found to have actually happened, but it wasn't necessarily just a flood. It was a cataclysmic happening that occurred to this planet. This same happening seems to happen over a certain amount of thousands of years. After a few thousands of years, this event seems to reoccur. So that had occurred, but it was a case where a number of people, that Noah person, were preparing. And the preparations were of diverse sorts. It involved saving things. And I could clue you on something that is similar to what had taken place back then. There is such preparations that are being made today. As of today, there are preparations for a cataclysmic event to happen that are being made. You don't see it in the form of a boat. Okay? And this was the same thing that happened in the past. People in leadership, Noah was such a figure, right? You have the person in the name of Noah, could be a character, prepared for an event that was going to take place. And today you have people in the leadership, those that are leaders, also preparing for an event that is going to happen. So that's what you have. In any event, the biblical story is completely allegorical. It is not the reality of humanity. It's, for the most part, is an attempt at telling the story of a particular family, a particular group, and attempt to spread it on to mankind, although it does not tell the whole of mankind. And so it's a very narrow understanding. But I'll skip past that so I can go to the point that I want to make. But before I do, I'll give you something very simple. If you think you're sitting on something here, why don't you try your luck at this? Which of the sons of Noah, which of the civilized sons of Noah is going to be now the father of the uncivilized aboriginal peoples of this planet that we find just about a little bit everywhere on the planet, that have been on this planet in their state and are still in their state till today? Since per your philosophy of biblical theory, you suggest that the whole world was wiped out. Everybody on it was wiped out, and only 4 couples now are going to repopulate the earth. So which of the sons of Noah is the progenitor of the Aboriginal folks? And by those, I mean the ones in Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, in the Americas, and those places. Even the Eskimos, if you want to put those in there. Keep in mind that per your Noah theory, all sons of Noah lived in a civilized setting and went back to civilization after the flood. So which of the sons, the civilized sons of Noah, produced the what we might call the uncivilized aboriginal folk of this planet? Get to tell it. Get to explain it. We're moving past the Bible. The next one we have is this proposal that we are the product of a reptilian, a reptilian group of folk, of beings, that somehow have come here some 4 million years ago and produced we, the peoples of this planet. This proposal is complete rubbish. This is one that is being promoted now by some folks still from the mankind stock. They're the ones that have served you evolution based on lack of understanding. They've also served you religion, the Genesis stuff, based on lack of understanding. And now they're giving you some reptilian stuff based on lack of understanding as well. And this particular proposal now has been backed by this gentleman by the name of David Icke. David Icke is the most prominent personality in that theory. And it is one that has nothing to do with reality. And the state of genes, as I've explained, the unchanging state of genes, as well as many other factors, is going to ensure that it is something that is not conducive to reality. And I do have a discourse on that goes deep into explaining why a reptilian, an amphibian type of entity, number one, could not have produced a human, the black sub-Saharan African, nor would it have a reason to produce a black human, philosophically speaking. And so you find that this stuff is nonsense. It doesn't deal with reality. The reality of this planet is one that is severely secret. You cannot know it. I am attempting to decipher it to you. And I've been doing my work. I am the most prominent person in that fort. And it doesn't get any better than this. You're not going to get any better information anywhere else with any more details and complete understanding anywhere else. So those three theories are out of the ballpark. They don't deal with reality. They are not the reality of humanity. And I wanted to get rid of those so I can now convey to you how the black being, the black person of today, of African origin, of which descend the so-called African American, those blacks in the Caribbeans and a little bit everywhere. This black person is not Homo Sapiens Sapiens. I've also mentioned that there are some blacks, some dark-looking folk that are, in our world, but this being that I'm precisely right now deal with as this pitch black being of sub-Saharan Africa. This being with the protruded jawbone, and I'll be describing this being later, but this being is not the Homo sapiens sapien. And you find that because of the genes of this being, and this is a point that I want to make very clear, because there are those of you out there, the education system of the world today is so, I can't find the word. It's so low grade that it is vexing to think that we as the human are sending our kids to school to learn this rubbish. Today you're finding, as far as mankind is concerned, they're telling you that the pygmy, the bushman of Africa, is the oldest being to have lived. And it is from it that everybody else is going to come. The little short pygmy African version, with lighter complexion, much lighter complexion than the sub-Saharan black African person. You find that the state of genes does not accept this proposal. The state of genes is one that is going to tell you now that this being, the pygmy folk, are not going to be on this planet before the pitch black African person. You see, this being is the first being on this planet because of genes, because we understand genetic to be flawless. It tells you that this pygmy folk of its complexion and its phenotype is not going to be that which now yields the pitch black African person. And skin complexion, as I've explained, is genetic. It is not dependent on the sun. It is not because those folk are in this portion of Africa that they are thus black. This is another nonsense that education is teaching our people out there, and they can teach their people. But to teach the human this nonsense is something that is vexing. So, moving along, we also find this being, this pitch black African person, right, of which we are the descendants here in America. We find this being to have been on this planet for over 200,000 years. And that is not the case of the Homo Sapiens Sapiens. There is not a scientist that will stand in front of you with this knowledge or in front of me to make this argument to me. This person will get a spanking and get out of the way. The Homo sapien has not been on this planet any sooner than 14,000 years. In the case of the Caucasian, no sooner than 8,000. This is your truth. Now, we find the sub-Saharan African to have been on this planet for over 200,000 years, and I'll explain that a little later. But here are the differences. There are many, many differences that set this being apart from the Homo sapiens sapiens, from mankind. But I'm going to tell you some of the most crucial ones with which you can make your argument if you find yourself in a setting where you have to convey this to a person. But for the sake of your learning, here are the most crucial ones. You find this being to have a different skull structure. And as I've explained, genes are responsible for the shaping of bones. And so if you find a being of a type of a skeletal structure, you know that this is dependent on the genes, thus the DNA. Okay? So this being now has a different skull structure. It is one that is denser, number one. And also, the appearance of it is one that now depicts a protruded jawbone, meaning the jaw is pushed forward. The skull towards the back will be somewhat elongated. Okay, the forehead of the skull will be somewhat at an angle. I'd say a good 15-degree angle, and it'll have wider eye sockets and more distant eye sockets. And because the jaw is protruded, you'll now find the nose to be back. And so if you were to draw a vertical line, it would be where the nose would now almost line up with the mouth. Almost. That is the structure of this being. And that skull structure is that which we find throughout time going back some 200 years. 200,000 years. That is the skull structure that you find, and that is the skull structure that is emblematic of the statues that you see of ancient time, the busts, the drawings, the carvings. You superimpose that over the statues, the Sphinx even, same skull structure. All the reproductions of massive, gigantic statues that you see there, they depict the same skull structure. That is the work of this human. That is the presence of this being on this planet. Such is not the case for the Homo Sapiens Sapiens, which skull structure is the following. It is a being with a skull structure with now the jawbone is retracted. As opposed to being protruded forward, it's retracted, inward. It is pushed inward. The skull towards the back now is going to be not elongated, but is going to be round towards the back. The forehead is not going to be that much at an angle. It'll be more straight and wider. This being is now going to have narrower eye sockets. Not only that, the eye sockets will be closer together. So now when you get to looking at this being in profile, and if you were to draw a vertical line, you'll now find the line to not even up with the nose, as in the case of the human at the described prior, but you'll find the line to go straight and line up with more the forehead, with the nose now pushed forward quite a bit, with the jaw very inward, the mouth inward. This is the structure of the Homo sapien. This is what, which the skull structure, which belongs to the Caucasian and the Asian, or the Semites, And just about every other type of peoples on this planet, every other being on this planet, feature this code structure. Now, there is going to be some slight dissimilarities, and I'll tell you why that is. Because it is a process, it is a gradual process aiming at the Caucasian. It's a gradual process aiming at producing the Caucasian specimen. You understand? This retracted jawline that those beings are going to now possess, they inherit that from another entity. And in my more extensive explanations, I provide what this entity is. I explain it. But they're going to inherit their features from another entity. At the end, with the Caucasian, this Caucasian now is going to look very much like this other entity that is going to produce them. That is why, towards the end, you'll find the later stock of the Caucasian to be of a blood type that is different, which is Rh negative. Rh negative because at that point, this being is very much unlike this other entity that had engaged in this procedure of making it. What you find, pay very close attention now, as those leading to becoming the Caucasian, their skull shapes are going to somewhat more resemble that of the human that I explained, right? They're now going to have very slightly, the jaw pushed a little forward, almost like the black being, the black person, but not that much. The closer you get to the Caucasian, the more dissimilar to the black human the skull becomes. And the more similar to the entity they inherited from, their skull become. You will find, well, let me continue and I'll make this very important. Bear this in mind, this comparison that I'm making. Let me give you some more differences. The black being, the black person, the black human, is fundamentally different, fundamentally biologically different than much of mankind, but notably the Caucasian being. You'll find this being to now feature its fundamental biological makeup as of an element that is different than that of the Caucasian. Its fundamental biological makeup is made of melanin. Whereas the final product of mankind, which is the Caucasian, its fundamental biological makeup is going to be pheomelanin. The type of melanin that is sulfur-based. Very different than that of the black African being. Another difference is you'll find that this black being, right, sub-Saharan Africa, has a type of superior, and I'm talking superior in a biological sense, a type of superior hair than the type of hair that the monkey has, right? The type of fur-like hair that the monkey has, which is recessive to the human. You see? So what you find with that is the type of hair that the human has is not one that can come from the fur-like hair that the monkey has. You understand? This here reveals to you that, in fact, and it's not only the hair, as I've explained already, the monkey cannot produce the human on so many levels. But I'm stressing all this because this is a more direct and more understandable manner of grasping this. The monkey recessive fur cannot produce the hair of the human, the crispy, curly, kinky hair of the human. You understand? And this is why you'll see that everybody else that has taken the monkey route, they do not have the hair of the human. Because, in fact, their hair, which is kind of fur-like also, the straight hair, is recessive to that of the human. You understand? And also they're going to inherit that straight hair from another entity. You see, now the education system you have tells you that everything becomes everything else. You know, the curly hair that the human has somehow becomes the straight hair of mankind, of the white person. Ridiculous. Genetics do not do that. Reality does not accept this rubbish. The fact of the matter is, these beings are going to inherit this trait here, for both the ape and the party that would have provided the information that is necessary in order for them to go from one step to another. It's another entity that is going to provide that for them. That is why this notion of evolution, one of the many reasons why this notion of evolution is not realistic, because it needs new information, and because they don't understand this that I'm explaining, because they're not willing to, perhaps they're not willing to accept the fact that this additional information had to have been provided by an external entity. They're now serving you something that is nonsensical, because a being by itself does not morph into something else. In other words, the monkey in continuity and perpetuity would have produced another monkey had it not been mixed or somehow associated with new information from another entity that possesses this biological property. So you'll find that every other being on this planet, at the exception of the black human, the sub-Saharan African that I'm describing, that don't belong to this mankind breed, to the Homo Sapiens Sapiens, they all have this slick, thin hair. But you're going to find, though, that the ones at an earlier experiment, because it was an experimental procedure, the ones at an earlier experiment, they're going to have the slick hair, but not as slick, not as thin, not as straight as the ones that are going to be later on. You understand? So you find some of those to be your aboriginal folks. Okay? You find some of those to be some of the dark complexioned folk in Africa, which also have the retracted jawbone, somewhat of a slick hair. You'll find them, patches in certain regions of Africa. You think they're this black being that I'm describing, but they are not. They are Homo sapiens as well, because though they look black, they have this same skull shape as the Homo sapien with slick hair. Anytime you see that on a being, that's the Homo sapien, and does not belong to this particular black being of ancient time, this particular black human race, which is the Aboriginal race of ancient time. You need to get this very, very clear in your skull, you that are listening, because there is such a demagogue out there, such a confusion, that most people, I'd say some 98% of folk, are confused by this. I'd even say some 99.5% of folk are confused by this, thinking that all black people are the same and come from the same. In fact, we don't even make a differentiation in black people. We say all beings are the same. Come from the same stock. Very wrong. Completely untrue. So you find those black, anytime you see a being with the slick hair that is not curly like the human being, the black person of sub-Saharan Africa, with a slick hair, retracted jawbone, somewhat, well-to school, thin hair, those are similar to the Caucasian. Those I'm describing it like a typical Indian person from India now. That's the Homo sapien, though their skin are dark. Those are some of the ones that would have come earlier within the experience. You see, it's an experimental, gradual procedure to achieve the Caucasian. And that's why you find those beings very related to the Caucasian. Yeah, now science doesn't tell you that now. You find the Aboriginal people, the Indian person, to be very related to the Caucasian. And the silliness there over the tension was now, this Indian person is now going to morph and become pale. Some of you that reject that, you now embrace this, albino notion. That the Caucasian were albinos from the Indians. Not true. It's a gradual procedure of making this being, you see. So when you find blacks that have slick hair and a skull shape that is reminiscent to the Caucasian, you're dealing with a Homo sapien, you're dealing with an experimental being coming to the Caucasian. Or you're dealing with a person that is the product of a biracial relationship, where this person has now acquired a lot of the genes permitting this person to look as so. And this person, parent, could be a black person with a person of the Homo sapiens stock, be it a Caucasian person or an Indian or one of the Semites, one of the sort of Caucasians, any of those people mixed with the black person is going to produce now a person that has lesser of the features of the typical black person. That is because Now there, you see an instance of genes showing itself to be consistent, to where you now find when a blending occurs, an entity, the resulting being, now acquires the genes from the other type. But it is not the silliness that the scientific community wants to shove down your throat as to telling you that a being by itself engenders now something that looks totally different than it. Such does not happen. Such is not conducive to the state of the universe, to life, to nature, to anything that exists that has life in it. So that's what you're looking at. You understand? That is one of the differences. Another difference you'll find is that all of these beings, understand this now, all of these beings do have a certain amount of Neanderthal genetic information. They share genetic information with the specimen that is Neanderthal. And the reason that is because the Neanderthal is also part of this experiment. It's going to be one of the specimens from the hominid stock, because it had to come from the monkey, to now becoming the more erect apes, to the hominids, get to your Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo ergaster, so on and so forth. Now you get to your Neanderthal, and then between that you're going to find your Zeta, the specimen that was captured down there in Russia, your Yeti, and your Bigfoot, and the rest of them. And you're going to end up with now the Neanderthal, and from that is going to come the Cro-Magnon, and leading to the Caucasian. You see? But you will find that every being from the mankind stock, this being that is now going to be produced, or basically I'm saying everybody else on the planet, okay, at the exception of this black being and the Jews. I have to stress the Jews. I do have a discourse that talks about the Jews and how they are different as well. But everybody else on this planet, the mankind stock, have the Neanderthal genetic information in them. That's because they all stem from this being. You understand? And the last, well, one of the most crucial differences, not the last, there's still more, but one of the most vital ones is the fact that many of the peoples of the mankind stock, they're going to now have a property that is foreign to the human. Many properties that are foreign, but this one is more at the forefront. It is something that science till this day does not understand, because their theory makes no sense. I understand it. I'm getting you to understand it. But if you go in pure evolution, you lost with that. That's why they're still lost. This being is now going to have this blood property that is Rh negative. Rh negative. Now, there's a lot of bamboozling on this notion. The very name of this property is very deceiving. It is made to deceive. It's a foreign blood. It could have been called Smith. It could have been called Judd. You know what I mean? It really, but to call it Rh negative is to give the illusion that it is negative of rhesus monkey. Meaning it doesn't have monkey in it. This type of being did not come from the monkey stock. That would be the illusion. When in fact this is the being that had actually come from the monkey. It is the final result of beings that have come via means of the monkey. So the name of it is deceiving. It only is a foreign type of blood to the human blood. Now, to be Rh negative is simply to say that this being now is at a stage where it no longer features the original blood type that the previous ones leading to it had, the blood type that was Rh positive, which they inherited from the monkey, okay? And over the continued re-engineering, or whatever the procedure entailed, the continued reproduction or remanufacturing, ending with the Caucasian, the final stock of this being now is no longer going to have any trace of that blood type, which is Rh positive. They're going to now begin to have Rh negative blood. Well, those that begin to have the Rh negative blood are going to start with the Neanderthal. You see, that's why some folk today, partly so, have some Rh negative blood. And those are folk that have it originally per their original sub-race, or those that have been subjugated by the right race through imperialism and whose women have been raped. You'll find that the Neanderthals started to have the Rh negative blood And Cro-Magnon is going to have it quite a bit more. The first stock of the Caucasian is going to have it. The last stock of the Caucasian is going to be fully Rh negative, thus now letting go of the Rh positive human blood to now have a blood type that is not of the human or one that is different, inheriting it from another entity that was present on this planet. That is your truth. Speak it. You will be targeted for it. You might be killed for it. That is your truth. Your mind as the human ought not be tolerant of anything less than the truth. That is your truth. That is what's happening. In the reverse facet of that, they're going to give you something called Rh positive, as to suggest that those with Rh positive blood are those that actually come from the rhesus monkey. Very deceiving. You're dealing with a very deceiving breed. You understand? Has nothing to do with that. Rh positive blood could be called Shannon or rat. It could be called anything. To call it Rh positive is now to create the illusion as to suggest that the folk with this blood come from the rhesus monkey, which is very silly. Because when you look at the Rh positive sub-Saharan African, the pitch black person, it has nothing to do with a rhesus monkey. The rhesus monkey is actually Rh negative. If you really do your investigation on that, you'll find that to be. The rhesus monkey is a man that actually happens to be almost white. White. You can call it a white monkey. You certainly understand that this pitch black African person did not come from this monkey. You see, you're dealing with a whole lot of bamboozling. The Rh positive blood property is actually a blood property that is pertinent to the human. It is called Rh positive. As I said, it could be called anything, but it is a blood property that is belonging, that is pertinent to the human being. It belongs to the human being. It is the blood type of the human being wherever it finds itself, be it here on this planet or anywhere else in the outer cosmos. That is human blood. That's what it is. That's what the African possesses. That's what you, the African American, possess, where you're not mixed with the other folks. That's what the ancient Egyptians possess, the Kemetic folk. That's what those folk that you see replicated in giant statues, that's what they possess. That's what our ancient civilizations of larger sized beings possess. It is human blood. Now, this kid that is on this planet, this Caucasian, is going to try now to tell you that this blood property comes from the monkey out of its misunderstanding, out of its sub-intelligence, its inability to comprehend reality. This blood property belongs to the human. And keep that in mind. I'm going to make a comparison with you a little later that'll blow your mind away, but I'm not going to give you the whole of it. I'll leave it up to you to finish it up and put two and two together. And so you now have the final stock of the mankind breed, right? The Homo sapien, which final stock is the pure Caucasian person, to now be of Rh negative blood. A good 30% of those folk are Rh negative. This is a blood property that they could not have inherited from the human because the state of genes ensured that this is not possible. It is a blood property that could not somehow pop up on the surface of this planet. You understand? It is a blood property that they inherited from a foreign entity. That is why you're going to find this Caucasian to have it. That is why you're going to find also the Hebrews to have it. The Jews to also be a good percentage of Rh negative. The remnants of them today, you have to understand there's been a lot of mixing going on. And it's through mixing and interbreeding that you have the diverse types of peoples or beings, human-like beings that you have on this planet, particularly the Semites and those folk that we have today that don't necessarily have a race, such as your Latino folks, the Arabs, folk like, there are quite a few of them that don't necessarily have a race. They happen to be the mixture. Okay, but to keep it very simple, there's only three races on this planet. There is the human race, there is the mankind breed, those are monkey peoples, and there is the Jew, the Adam and Eve family, the Hebrew. That's it. Everything else are sub-races. Within the mankind stock now, there's going to be levels of sub-races. And there's going to be Semites, meaning mixing. Okay? Those of you that have misconstrued the term Semite, those of you that are religious, and it has nothing to do with some character named Shem. In fact, that got me going too deep into explaining it to you. Semite simply means mixed beings from a subtype with another subtype, or subrace with another subrace, or alpha race with another race, and those are mixed beings. But within the mankind stock, you're going to have some sub-races to themselves that are not Semites. For instance, you're going to have your Indians. Those are sub-races to themselves. You're going to have your Aboriginals, sub-races to themselves. You're going to have the Caucasian, sub-races to itself. You're going to have even the hominids or sub-races to themselves. When you get to the level where it's now at Yeti level and Bigfoot level, those are sub-races to themselves. Through this experiment aiming at the Caucasian. The Caucasian is actually the perfection of the mankind breed. It is that which was aimed at being produced. When it is produced, mankind is called finished, accomplished, achieved. That's why the Caucasian leads mankind today. It is the product that was aimed at being produced. That's why it is now in the leadership. It, along with the Jews. Now, if I go to explain all this to you, that'd be giving you too much. Right now, all I'm emphasizing all this, the reality that the black person is not the Homo Sapiens Sapien. Okay? So, this Rh negative blood is a property that the being inherited from having mixed considerably with a foreign biological matter, foreign biological entity. That's why they acquired the other features that they acquired also, the retracted jawbone, the round skull, and the pale skin, right? And the straight hair. That's inherited from another entity. Okay? Do your investigating, you'll find this to be true. Some of you may have heard of talks like the Aryan race. You may have heard of talks like tall whites and stuff of that nature. Those may not lead you to the truth, but those are, side notes that may lead you to this truth that I'm telling you here. Because genes ensure that a being remained what it is. To be or to look differently is to acquire new biological information from somewhere else. Or to look differently is to mix, is to interbreed with another type. So this is what we have. This black African being does not pertain to the Homo sapiens stock, does not pertain to the mankind stock. Now, and in addition, this being now is one of a thought process that is different than the mankind stock. It's designed to be, it is different. You see, we've blended up, and so the ways and manners and behaving of everybody has become similar, but at origin, we did not behave in the same manner. That's why you'll find in ancient time that the blacks would refer to pale people as savage. They used to behave. It is over time that this being is becoming to acquire humanity and civilization. But it used to behave like savage. Like it would go about killing and go about war and taking over and stealing and just, that's what it would do. It terrorized the planet. But over time, it now learned not to do that. That's why it lived with the human. It learned that such are not the human way of being. And it's still learning. But this being is one of a different thought process now. I would have to establish a difference for you between even the black stock that I'm describing. This would now deal with the sub-Saharan African, the typical sub-Saharan African, and those of we that are here in the United States, and those that were in Kemetic civilization, and those that were even prior to Kemetic civilization. There is a bit of differentiation between those, but that would take too long. The point that I'm stressing here is the fact that this being is not a part of the Homo sapien clan, does not belong to it. That's final, case closed. Now, I'm going to clue you in something that leads you to the biggest secret of this world. One that when you do your own research, or if you use your intelligence enough, you can simply put two and two together, and you will arrive at a type of understanding that is made to be the most ambiguous, the most secretive understanding of our planet. And I'll say this. This black being that I'm describing, the sub-Saharan type African, is closer, listen to this now, is closer related to the bonobo, more so than it is to the Neanderthal. the black African person is closer related to the bonobo, more so than it is to the Neanderthal. Yet the reverse of this is actually the case of mankind, the case for everybody else. In other words, everybody else is closer related to the Neanderthal. And if, as I've said, as I've explained, the state of genes ensures that a recessive entity is not going to produce one that is superior to it. Get this. So if you find that the pitch black African being, the human, the sub-Saharan African, the folk out of Egypt, out of Kemet, out of way back in Atlantis, out of way back in time, if you find that it is closer related to the bonobo, now I'll leave it up to you to do your reasoning, put your intelligence hat on, and figure out which one of the two came to be first. That's that. That is my explaining on this topic, and I hope this was able to enlighten you and give you a different manner of understanding part of our world, humanity for that matter, and that you're able to utilize some of this information, and that you don't sit on it and you spread it. I'm providing this information to even say free is an oxymoron. There is no such a thing as selling information. It is because we've become part of this sub-intelligent lifestyle that we are now selling information. There's no such a thing as selling knowledge, you see. So if you know the knowledge now, it is your duty now to pass it on, and so that you can nurture the soul of another person, be it of our humankind or be it of the Homo sapien kind.